In a hurricane-struck, forgotten corner of the American South, South of Midnight tells a story of resilience, regret, and the monsters we carry within. I've walked its broken roads and faced its evil spirits, and today I'm taking you deep into a Southern Gothic voyage to find out everything about this game. Welcome to Overgrown Games. I'm a completionist gamer who primarily plays RPGs and story-driven games. Xbox and Compulsion games gave me the code for South of Midnight, an action-adventure game set in the rural American South that takes us deep into a journey through Southern Gothic folklore. I'm clearly not American. I'm not even a native English speaker, but I've always been fascinated by the southern United States, so I jumped at the opportunity. To get my usual stuff out of the way, I experience games through multiple playthroughs, hunting for achievements, collectibles, and story branches, if there are any. I believe this mindset gives me some credibility on this platform when sharing my thoughts. You might agree or disagree with what I say, of course, but at least you'll know I speak from solid experience. If you don't already know, Compulsion Games is a Montreal-based Canadian company, best known for their previous titles We Happy Few and Contrast. Their mission, as stated, is to build hallucinatory adventures in worlds that are strange but also familiar. In South of Midnight, there isn't any story branching to explore, but there are quite a few collectibles to gather, some of them quite tricky to find. A single playthrough of the game may take around 15 to 20 hours. Replaying the various story chapters while hunting for achievements, which you can do after completing the main story, brought my total playtime to about 40 hours. I'm notoriously slow, and I take notes and record videos during my playthroughs, so if you're just playing the game for yourself, it will take much less time. I'd say right off the bat that this game really shines in its world building, characters, and the overall vibe, which it absolutely nails through visuals, music, and voice accents. I'll explain it all in this review and analysis of the game. South of Midnight is priced at 40 euros of US dollars, which might seem a little steep for a game that runs about 15 hours. But overall, I genuinely enjoyed my time with it. That said, there are a few aspects that could have been stronger, and I'll cover those shortly. Considering today's rising game prices and the amount of playtime I got from it, I feel comfortable recommending it. I gave South of Midnight a buy, though keep in mind it's also available on Game Pass. Let me briefly add that I fully realized my next video was supposed to be about a completely different game, but the same day I posted that update, I was given this review key, which came with a deadline, so I had to bump this video up the pipeline and give it top priority. That will teach me to think I can set anything in stone. I hope you understand. As always in my videos, since this is a recent game, I won't talk extensively about the story, and I'll avoid any major spoilers, but some minor ones will be inevitable. Without further ado, let's dive into South of Midnight. On the technical side, the game is made in Unreal Engine 4, and it comes with the usual downsides, like hiccups, small stutters, and occasional inconsistencies. At first, I thought it might be my hardware, but I checked out videos from other creators on both Xbox and high-end PCs, and they experienced more or less the same minor annoyances. Nothing game-breaking, maybe just a little irritating. The game is decently solid overall. It only crashed on me once, during the final boss fight, so I had to restart the game and repeat the entire encounter. That's because the different phases of the boss fight are saved in a kind of temporary way. If you die, you restart from the current phase, not the entire fight. But if you exit the game, you'll continue from the last full checkpoint. Other than that, the game autosaves frequently, so you won't have to constantly replay the same sections, even during the escape sequences, which can be pretty tight. The game uses a sort of stop-motion art style, which can be, let's say, difficult to get used to during gameplay. It's an artistic choice and I respect it, but fortunately, you can disable it in the accessibility options, so you'll only see it during cutscenes, not during regular gameplay. Speaking of accessibility, South of Midnight includes a solid set of options. From font size to color adjustments, visual and audio cues, you can personalize much of how the game presents itself and guides you. Nicely done there. Personally, I enabled the subtitle background and set it to about 50% opacity, which made reading easier on my eyes. There are also options to skip regular fights and boss battles if you just want to enjoy the story and the platforming. As I mentioned earlier, I watched other creators' content to compare performance, and I believe the game plays better with the controller. I played it with mouse and keyboard, and some hitboxes and grapple points didn't seem to register very well. There is also a slight input delay, and while that might be just just a skill issue on my end. I didn't notice the same problems in footage from people playing on consoles. One last oddity, you can skip some cutscenes, but not all of them. And when you're replaying chapters to collect missed items, it's a little frustrating not to be able to skip scenes you've already seen. It's more strange than it is annoying. I nitpicked a little, but overall I can confidently say that South of Midnight is a technically solid game. This game is Hazel's story, and I won't go too deep into it, simply because it's a core part of the experience, and I don't want to spoil it for you. I'll just talk about the general setup. The game is heavily inspired by the stories and folklore of the southern United States, set in a small town where something supernatural happens, tales all about facing difficult times and things that scare you. Hazel is a young woman living in the fictional rural town of Prospero, Chickasaw County, Mississippi. She's just graduated high school and is preparing to go to college, possibly on an athletic scholarship. Her dad died when she was young, and her mother works in social services. Our story begins as the town of Prospero is about to be hit by a hurricane. Hazel and her mother are preparing emergency kits and getting ready to move to the local church, which also serves as a shelter. Hazel is very driven and competitive. She's an athlete after all, and ends up arguing with her mother just before the storm hits. Despite her temper, Hazel is a good person who respects her elders. Her mother sends her to check on the neighbors before they leave, and despite the argument, Hazel agrees. While doing so, a terrible flood occurs, and their house is swept away by the waters, with her mother still inside. Despite some moments of desperation, Hazel refuses to believe her mother is dead. The entire story then revolves around following the path of the flood in search of the house and, ultimately, her mother. The setup is pretty straightforward, and the storyline is very simple, but it works well for what South of Midnight wants to tell us. We're introduced to strong-willed people living with limited means, painting a picture of a world we'll come to know in depth. As the story progresses, Hazel is kissed by the summer rains and slowly discovers she's been chosen by the land to become the next weaver. Weavers are mythical figures capable of seeing strands, magical filaments linked to traumatic past events or human suffering, and using them like embroidery threads to mend and heal individuals or the land itself. The game's fairy tale tone is quickly interwoven, pardon the pun, with the deep traumas people have experienced in their lives, tackling serious themes involving deeply disturbed individuals and gravely dysfunctional families. The traumas these people carry take physical, supernatural forms that only the Weaver can see, attracting haints, ghosts or evil spirits that feed on pain. Hazel's role is to banish these spirits and heal those traumas, learning new abilities along the way, confronting fears, all while searching for her missing mother. She'll also encounter monsters born from terrible past events, creatures she'll learn not only to fight but to reweave, offering them peace. In the end, I think it's a well-told story with interesting characters and excellent world building, which I'll talk about in a moment. The game could have easily fallen into traps. It touches on issues that could be easily stereotyped or trivialized, but it doesn't. In my experience, it handles its themes with respect and never feels heavy-handed. What struck me the most is that South of Midnight doesn't judge, even when it introduces characters who've done terrible things or developed self-destructive habits. At the end of the day, all Hazel wants is to help and heal others. The world of South of Midnight is built on magical realism, meaning magic is real here and can happen at any moment. The setting is entirely shaped by folk tales and urban legends. Some people are gifted with magic, but more often they create supernatural phenomena through their actions, usually the bad ones. Really bad ones. Magical folklore is a core element of this game, and it's reflected in the world design. The further you move from civilization into the wilds, the stronger this element becomes. You'll meet very strange people and creatures, from a giant friendly catfish to an alligator grown the size of a small island. The game itself is divided into levels called chapters, each representing a part of Hazel's story. A pretty standard structure for story-driven games. These chapters vary in length. Some are longer, packed with lore pieces, collectibles, combat, and boss fights. Others are shorter and serve primarily to develop the story. Almost every chapter follows a rhythm, alternating between narrative moments, platforming, and combat. The story explores deep personal traumas, both recent and from the distant past. These traumas can form knots you must unravel as a weaver. Some particularly tragic events give rise to trauma vortexes, intense concentrations of pain that warp the land and attract dangerous spirits and creatures. The levels range from flooded fields and mountain landscapes to a later chapter heavily inspired by a nightmarish version of New Orleans, complete with a creepy cabaret and vaudeville act. Still, the most common scenery is made up of overgrown swamps, abandoned houses, and reclaimed wilderness. Generally speaking, everything feels oversized, including furniture, which I believe is an intentional artistic choice to make you feel small and almost lost in this strange, vast world. These levels are mostly linear, meaning there's only one main path to advance the story, a path that you can easily highlight and follow. However, there are also several small side paths that lead to fluff, used for upgrading abilities, as well as lore documents or health upgrades. Fluff can be collected from nodes, stone piles, team flips, and by winning fights. Each level displays your progress in the pause menu, showing how much fluff you've collected compared to the total, how many lore documents you've found, and whether there are any health filaments left to pick up, which increase Hazel's overall health. All the expected action-adventure elements are here: climbing, jumping, double jumping, gliding, grappling, wall running, and more. Hazel performs these actions by manipulating strands, a skill she gradually develops through the story. With the very same strands, she can also move objects, even some very large ones. These two magical abilities, pull and push, are used both in exploration and in combat, though they have different cooldown times depending on the context. Hazel can also summon Crouton, a creepy doll she puppets to crawl through small tunnels, retrieve fluff, unveil unreachable trauma knots, or open new paths. These tunnels are often decorated with fairy tale-like environments, such as rabbits sitting at tiny tables for tea, which were honestly charming and fun to discover. An interesting twist is that, as a weaver, Hazel can recall objects from the past. She often recreates crates, floating platforms, or even vehicles to access otherwise unreachable areas. These objects are temporary, so you need to time your platforming well. While there is no fall damage, environmental hazards are everywhere, from polluted water and giant brambles to explosive mushrooms and massive flytrap plants. The game keeps you alert most of the time, and it generally succeeds in doing so. Overall, the platforming was engaging and fun, though not particularly new or groundbreaking. I did have some trouble with certain ledges, as Hazel sometimes failed to latch on even when it seemed like she should, but it wasn't a big issue. My real challenge was with wall running, which might just be a skill issue on my part. Some sections require jumping from one wall to another while running, and I struggled to consistently grab onto the next surface. Combat is functional, but I don't think it's the strongest part of the game. Hazel uses her Weaver hooks, which you acquire almost immediately at the beginning of the story, to hit enemies and manipulate strands, much like an embroiderer using her hooks. There is no parrying, and during fights you'll be dodging a lot. There is a slight delay in Hazel responding to your commands, which can lead to frustration in specific situations. South of Midnight offers 4 difficulty levels: the usual story, easy, balanced, and advanced modes, plus the option to fully customize your experience. I've noticed these custom difficulty features appearing more often in recent games, and I think it's a great way to tailor gameplay to your preferences. There isn't a huge gap between difficulty levels. Yes, enemy hit harder and healing is lower at higher settings, but if you just button mash, you can still die pretty quickly, even on story mode. In the footage I'm using for this video, you'll see combat from different difficulties. You can switch between them freely without restarting your playthrough, and I experimented with several. I also used the lower difficulty when completing the game 100%, replaying chapters to hunt down collectibles. Back to the combat mechanics. A large part of the overall strategy revolves around managing skill cooldowns, and they're not short. I'd even say that combat basically boils down to using your cooldowns efficiently. Hazel gradually unlocks and upgrades 5 active skills, all tied to strand manipulation. In order, these skills let you temporarily stun enemies and make them take more damage, pull or push enemies or Hazel herself, send Crouton to briefly possess a foe, and unleash area of effect damage. Pull, push, and Crouton can also be used outside of combat to interact with the environment. Collecting fluff is the key to upgrading your abilities, as there are no traditional levels or experience points. Fluff is the resource you spend to purchase new skills or upgrades. On the right side of the upgrade screen, you'll find your active skills, while the left side features a small tree that unlocks new attack types or improves existing ones, including your dodge. New nodes become available as you progress through the story, and their cost generally increases the further you go. In addition to active skills, you also unlock new attack types using the Weaver hooks, like striking right after a dodge or executing a jump attack. Not all of them are equally useful. I imagine it depends on your playstyle, but for me, the Amplified Rend felt pretty useless. It's a charged attack, but combat is fast-paced and often involves multiple enemies at once, so stopping to charge rarely worked in my favor. After defeating an evil spirit, you should entangle its remains in the arena. Doing so slightly heals you and reduces reduces your cooldowns, just a bit. The remains stay active for about 3 or 4 seconds, so you have to act quickly. You can also unlock an upgrade that causes a strand explosion when you entangle remains, damaging and pushing away nearby enemies. This one was pretty useful. As for how combat is structured, it always takes place in arenas. You'll enter an enclosed space, usually through a corridor or a doorway, and the arena will lock you in and spawn enemies in waves. Each arena has a healing boon you can use during combat. It's a one-time use, unless you're on story or easy difficulty, in which case it respawns. Boss fights usually give you more than one of those green healing clouds. Once you've cleared all enemies, you need to unravel the stigma knot in the arena to cleanse the area and reopen the exit. Enemy variety isn't huge, and each enemy type tends to have a best tactic to deal with it. For example, you might immediately send Crouton to possess a fast melee Haint, turning him into an ally and creating a distraction. Or you can pull a weak ranged Haint toward you and go all out. Best practices that help. Combat overall isn't bad, but there are a few pain points, especially when trying to hit larger enemies or interact with remains. You're prompt to press the appropriate button when near remains, but if you're not facing them just right or close enough, it won't register. I think it should trigger as soon as the prompt appears. It's not a major issue, but after fighting arena after arena, it can start to wear on you. Boss fights, on the other hand, are a different story. I'm not going to talk much about them here because they're very spoilery, but I found them engaging. Each one has a narrative connection, unique mechanics with multiple phases, and distinct, well-designed arenas. They were interesting and challenging without being frustrating. Maybe the stop-motion choice won't be appreciated by everyone, but the visuals are one of the strengths of this game, at least in my opinion. The art direction is very distinct, embracing the Southern Gothic style in a comic book cartoonish way. Many of the scenery elements were handcrafted. As soon as you leave town, everything feels vast, overgrown, and at times suffocating. Houses are rickety, if not outright in shambles. Even the manors you visit are decadent. The company built real models, and Compulsion Games digitized them. Hazel navigates dark swamps, flooded farmlands, even a nightmarish decaying city, and climbs a clock tower, which I wasn't a huge fan of due to my frustrating time spent on Halloween events in Guild Wars 2 in the past. You may enjoy it though. There is a documentary included with the premium edition of the game that explains some of this behind-the-scenes work, and it's quite interesting. As mentioned, everything in the environment is large and exaggerated in a cartoonish way. People are caricatures of themselves, with exaggerated traits and often grotesque appearances, like Grandma Bunny or the quite peculiar Ministry. The attention to detail is immense. Hazel's idle animations constantly remind you she's an athlete, with frequent leg stretches and posture shifts. I was one in high school and used to behave in a very similar manner. Monsters, especially the bosses, are spooky but fun in their own way. They're really strange but include comic details, like toy eyes sewn onto them. There is a constant use of lace and embroidery, especially in the visual representation of magic, which is a deliberate nod to Southern Gothic aesthetics. Textiles, crochet, and knitting are everywhere. The miniature furniture with animals in Crouton's tunnels is a direct callback to children's fable book illustrations. Stunning scenery isn't rare here, and some locations feature truly beautiful lighting effects. Generally speaking, the world of South of Midnight to me feels grounded in realism, while simultaneously portraying a surreal and bizarre atmosphere. I loved it. It's a very strong pillar of this game. Sounds and voice acting are, without any doubt, another of the strongest parts of this game. I'm not enough of an expert to tell you if the accents are truly authentic to that part of Mississippi, but I can say they do an excellent job of selling the illusion that you are in a remote region of the southern United States. And that's what matters to me.
Whew, it is really picking up out there. You ready to go?
I was over here all alone.
I'm sorry, I know. I swung by the shelter because there was a leak in the roof, and then I had to drive folks back and forth to Jolene's to ride out the storm. Besides, you are young and spry, my little track star. Oh, shoot, we got 5 minutes. Let's go. Did you pack everything?
Mama, I'm grown. This ain't my first hurricane. I know what to do.
My salvation.
A talking fish? Nope. Ain't no way.
Oh, Weaver, like you must have seen stranger things than me. And I was so sorry to hear about your misfortunation. You find your mama yet?
How do you know about my mama?
Well, before I tell you what I know, would you mind?
The team went so far as to hire people to travel to specific locations and record natural audio, like sounds from Louisiana swamps, to incorporate them into the game. I couldn't tell you if all the sounds were real or digitally created, but they definitely contribute to the overall immersion. The soundtrack of this game is really good. I don't say that often, I think I only mentioned it once before in the Banishers review, but I'm a big fan of rock, southern rock, blues, folk, country music and the like, so I really enjoyed everything about this game's music. I fully expect South of Midnight to at least be nominated for Best Score and Music at the Game Awards. It encompasses all the genres you'd expect from the Deep South. Pretty much everything I've said is right up my alley, so I'm going to bore you with some teasers.
Okay, why are you running towards the screen?
I remember my brother, his fate was so cruel. He saw things so different, branded a fool. He found trouble often, each place we'd go. He didn't know that this was the end. He was my brother, Benji his name.
The composer hired musicians from the South to create and perform original songs, and that was incredible.
The game. And we wanted to work with these artists from the South, singers from the South, fiddle players, drummers, organ players. David was from a gospel church in Nashville.
Mama will be there in the morning.
Let's wrap this video up. Thanks again to Compulsion Games and Xbox for the key. It's only the second one I've ever received, and it arrived during a tough time of the year for me both professionally and personally. Still, I accepted it because I genuinely wanted to play South of Midnight. I had to shuffle my schedule a bit, but that's okay. It's a good reminder to not announce what I think my next video will be. Really, I'm sitting on 2 completed scripts, just waiting to be recorded and edited. Not counting this one, but that's fine. South of Midnight shines in vibes. I don't know how else to put it. It oozes Deep South atmosphere, and I loved it. From the environment to the accents to the music. It almost feels impossible that a Canadian studio could create such a heartfelt love letter to the US South. And yet, here we are. But this isn't just an interactive movie. Gameplay-wise, I think the combat is okay, the platforming is fun, except for the wall runs, and while the main story hook might be simple, you'll experience some truly twisted and dark tales throughout Hazel's journey. Some shocking, others even moving. I haven't talked about them at all to avoid spoilers, but trust me, they're there. I don't believe Compulsion Games is known for making sequels, but if they want to start now, I wouldn't mind South of Midnight 2 and more of Hazel's adventures. Come on, she's only 18. There are still so many stories to tell. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like, comment and subscribe. It all helps me reach more RPG and story-driven players out there. Let me know what you think of this game. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.